his limbs seem a little more fragile to me. But then again, though, if you think about it, like you look at the other pictures, even with their coats and stuff on, their arms don't look so small. It's like that picture, though, their arms and legs, well, their legs almost match, but the arms seem way too small.
That's what I thought too.
I don't know. It's a weird picture. We'll have a link up on our website you can go to and check it out.
So I can affirm that is not the Bigfoot. It could be his abandoned cousin, Yeti. Never know. So some people believe that this figure was actually one of the hikers returning from a raised piece of land, which, yeah, we can see that. Probably looking to get their bearings. The fact that it was the last picture Thibaut Bernal took, though, leads to some people perhaps reading more into what there actually is, or perhaps it wasn't Bigfoot or anyone from that group. So I don't know.
It's a weird picture, that's for sure.
It is. All right, so this last theory that we're going into is what they've essentially wrote it off as at this point. As Dan, you said 2019, they closed the book saying that it was an avalanche that caused these?
Yes, that is correct.
So that is apparently the most obvious answer. Radioactivity, check. Sure, you always get that in an avalanche. Missing tongue and eyes? Yeah. Let's add that to an avalanche side effect as well. But I'll tell you what they think about this. Okay, so for the most obvious explanation would be that the group, for all their experience, were the unfortunate victims of a freak avalanche. That's it. Case solved. That's it. We're good. Well, not quite. First off, the area has absolutely no history of avalanches. Certainly none that would cause outright death. Secondly, even if this was a freak occurrence that just happened to hit on the night when hikers just happened to be on that part of the mountainside, and there was simply no evidence of an avalanche, when the searchers eventually combed the area in search of these missing hikers. Aside from there being no evidence of an avalanche, the injuries eventually discovered on the recovered bodies didn't line up with such an incident. Although, this explanation was very much promoted at the time, and even now some people insist that's what happened. It simply doesn't add up to me personally. But such instance, against the obvious facts, could be argued to suggest a cover-up of sorts.
Yeah. So now we roll into personal thoughts and theories, because those are all the theories. And my personal thought and theory around all this kind of adds on to the avalanche theory, if y'all are cool with me going over mine.
No.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, Dan. So I think, now this is just my personal thought and theory behind all this. I think it was an avalanche. I think an avalanche was coming down, okay, and they heard it, right? They went crazy. We're like, we got to get out of this tent. They cut the tent open, and partial avalanche happened, maybe. Weird shit happened. They tried to climb up a tree, and didn't work out too well. They ended up dying, right? But you're probably wondering, what about the radioactivity? Now, this is what I know for certain, okay? When you go and work at a nuclear power plant and you're around radioactivity and you leave the plant, there is a potential that you take radioisotopes with you. I have seen people at nuclear power plants come into certain other power plants and have radioisotopes on their shoes from other nuclear power plants, okay? Now this Yuri Krivonchenko guy or whatever, we talked about him and how he worked at, where was it? At Cherblinsky 40, the secret nuclear facility. He was one of the many who was sent to clean it up, and that was the plutonium plant. Now, if I knew the exact radioisotopes that were found on the bodies, and it was a part of like a plutonium, or it was an isotope that could be traced back to a plutonium plant, then I would be, that's it. The radioactivity is just from his clothes, right? He worked there and he wore the same clothes or shoes. And they were just trace amounts from when he worked there, which could be plausible. Those trace amounts stay around forever, depending on what isotope it is. So I can see the radioactivity, man. The only thing that I'm like iffy about is the eyeballs and the tongue. And that's why I'm kind of leaning more towards like maybe they did die during an avalanche. The isotopes was from the dude working at the nuclear power plant, and the girl got her eyeballs and tongue ate by an animal. That's the only plausible explanation I can really like. If I had to lean towards something, that would be it. But is another thing that throws a wrench in all this is that weird last photo. Could that have been something that they saw that was maybe stalking them? And the girl was like, we have to take a photograph of. Was the girl who took a photograph the one who was writing the weird diaries?
The photo of the weird person creature was Thibaut Renault.
Oh.
The Dubinina was the one with the weird diary.
Oh, okay. All right. Maybe something was tracking them throughout their entire expedition, and they kind of felt that, and then they finally got a picture of it, and that night is when it went insane and decided to attack them. I don't know. Just a theory.
That could be a possible reason why those people tried to climb the tree. They can get high, get above it, and they certainly dug into that tree to get up. Whatever, if they were running from an avalanche or possible Yeti or some sort of threat, they climbed that tree with their life in danger. You don't tear up your hands like that just because you want to climb a tree.
Yeah, you don't tear out of a tent. If you're in a freezing cold and that's your tent, you don't cut it open with a knife to get out unless it's a life or death situation. So that's my theory. I don't know, truly. If I had to take the more plausible route, I'd say avalanche. If I had to take the more outrageous route, I would say an animal of some weird mythological creature, half alien, half Bigfoot, killed them. So Dan, what is yours? If you had to lean, what's your personal thoughts and theories behind all this?
Literally, the start of yours was exactly my thinking. Is that an avalanche was starting to come out, and I'm going to assume that maybe one or two of them were outside of the tent. Either saw or heard the avalanche, yelled it out, and the others, instead of like going through the zipper because it was probably closed, when you exit, you close it up for other people, courtesy. They probably just ripped open the tent, jump out. One of them had like one shoe on maybe when they were running around. So they tried to put their clothes on, but pretty much frantically just ran. The two Yuris tried to climb the tree to get above where the snow was coming down. Unfortunately, failed. So I'm definitely thinking the avalanche was the first part of it. And like you said, Krivony Shenko, working at the plutonium plant, this nuclear secret site or whatever, he could have probably had an uptake.
Yeah.
He was radioactive himself. Maybe something like that. That's probably why they found some of the clothes that have radioactivity. He might have been radioactive himself, because I'm not sure how long before this expedition was before he was at that plant. So he could have still been fresh in him. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying I know anything about nuclear or the decay rate of certain isotopes.
An isotope, yeah.
Yeah. But, that kind of makes sense for that, because it wasn't on all clothes. Because if they were around something radioactive enough, there would be more of it. But it was only on, like, I guess a certain set of clothes. But then, just like you said, like the tongue, I'm thinking maybe frostbite. Tongue froze, being cold, she probably tongue was sticking out, didn't know, went to bite down, bit off her own damn tongue.
Do you think it might have been multiple avalanches? Maybe the first one came down and some of them got away, and then they come back to get the clothes to survive longer?
They did try to go back to the tent.
Yeah, and then more avalanche comes down.
It's possible because, it comes down in kind of like a layers.
The skull fractures, boom, hits their heads, and the compression force that they died from was from the snow compacting on them. And then it'd been, 4 or so months since they were found. So the snow could have melted, right? I don't know.
They said it didn't show evidence of avalanche.
Oh. We'll scrap that theory.
They said there was no evidence of avalanche.
That's what they said when